guys, it's Gilly Hunt here with the letter M for markers in my Gilly Hunt's A to Z guide to Stampin' Up products. So, what kind of markers am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about these wonderful things. I'm going to just show you a whole host of these lovely things. These are Stampin' Up's many Marvellous markers. They come in a wonderful carry case, which carries them beautifully with a little handle, and there are over 40 colours and counting, because each time we bring out new colours, new Stampin' Up in colours, then you can fill in the spaces in your case with the extra colours. So wonderful selection. Let me introduce you to the exact markers and what they do, and give you some ideas of what you might work on with them. So first of all, let's have a look at the actual markers themselves. So here's one of them. As with all of our other products, these are colour coordinated. So this one is a Melon Mambo, it says so on here for me. And I know that if this is Melon Mambo, it'll go with the Melon Mambo cardstock, it'll perfectly match with the Melon Mambo ink, and so on and so on and so on. All the embellishments, all the ribbons, anything that has the word Melon Mambo next to it in the catalogue will match. And it will not only match, but it will be a perfect match. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's double-ended. So you'll notice that there's a wider line this side and a smaller line that side, and so this small side is a, let me just put it up against a piece of card for you, is a small writing tip, which is perfect for writing beautifully, but it's also really lovely for tiny details. So let me just give you a little scribble of that line. It's a lovely, nice, simple, quite a small, neat little line. Okay, and on the other end is a brush tip. So let's just put that against there to show you too. And that brush tip is beautiful for colouring and for filling in larger spaces. And it's got a lovely, soft, beautiful flow to it. So you have your writing tip and your brush tip. Okay, and what is inside this? Well, inside here is a dye ink, and it's a water-based ink. And that's important to know because we have two sets of markers, and I have shown you these other markers on another occasion, but we have these which are called the Stampin' Blends, and they are both quite different, and it's important to know the difference. These Stampin' Blends are filled with an alcohol-based solvent solution. These, the markers that we're talking about today, are filled with a water-based product. And that means that you can do all kinds of things that you can do with water-based inks, but you can't blend them in the same way as you can use the Stampin' Blends. I will show you a way of getting a blending effect, but they are not blendable pens as such, but they have some amazing other attributes, I suppose you'd call it. So let's get going and show you all those attributes. The first thing you need to know though is that these are lovely because they're water-based, they're easy to clean. You can use your chamois if you've used if you've scribbled on anything that's that you can clean up, and you can also just wash your hands with these. You're not going to get in too much of a mess. Okay, now the other thing you need to know is that if you're outlining or making, let's say you're wanting to colour in these lovely butterflies. These butterflies are stamped, so we need to stamp them in Stays On ink. That would be the suggested ink to use. Because it's a solvent-based ink, when you put the dye, which is water-based, onto the solvent stays put. It doesn't mix and blend together, so you don't get any of the black running into your dye. And if I bring this up really nice and close, that's how you end up with this lovely, really detailed, look how small that butterfly is next to my finger and my fingernail, and I've got lots and lots of tiny little details. So none of it runs together, none of it blends. It all stays separate and clean and crisp and clear. But look, no brush marks, no nothing like that. Isn't that great? So we recommend StazOn ink for that. Now I am going to say that I quite frequently use the Memento ink as well. It shouldn't work because Memento ink is a dye-based ink, and so it should be that when I put the wet water from the dye-based ink against the wet dye-based outline, it should possibly pick it up, and it does a little bit. But I think as long as you leave your Memento ink to totally dry, so I quite often do my stamping and then I'll leave it maybe till the end of the day or till the following day, and then I'll do my colouring. So as long as you leave it plenty of time to get it totally dry, it doesn't pick up very much. So best is StazOn, second best is Memento, but I like to use the Memento a lot myself because you can get much finer lines for your actual stamping. So it's a kind of trade-off you have to make. Okay, so that's the first thing. So let's think, what are we going to use if we buy these pens? What are we going to use them for? Well, we can use them for some plain old colouring. Here's a little doodle I coloured. I'll just bring it up so you can really see it in detail. Absolutely fabulous, vibrant, lovely, deep, dark colours. No nasty pen marks. These are not just sort of felt pens, these are proper dye-based inks inside. So we could use it for colouring, and like I did with the butterflies, I think what you'll find is that these particular pens are particularly good for getting really nice graphic, bright, sharp, crisp, contrasting colours. Okay, so that's the first thing you can use them for, just plain old colouring. And then I did say that you can use them, oh, excuse me, getting all the bits and pieces out, here we go. I did say you can use them to get some blended effects. Okay, they are not blending pens, they don't automatically blend together, they don't blend together different colours, not terribly well anyway. But what you can do is you can, like on this, you can get some softening and some blending of the colours, some tonal work. So you can go from the dark red to the pale pink. And how do you do that? Well, you have to buy an extra little pen, and that's the blender pen. Okay, and this is fabulous. So let me show you. I want just to have a little piece of background paper because I want to see you to be able to see this. I've got a little piece of window sheet, but you could use an old piece of plastic packaging. You could use one of your blocks, so you could just use the block itself that you use for stamping. And what we're going to do is we're going to scribble on it. And we're going to scribble the ink from your pens. So this is your Marvellous marker, just scribbled onto that. And now you're going to take your blender pen and you're going to very gently pick up a little bit of the ink. Now, the whole point of a blender pen is that they actually don't have any colour themselves. So whatever is on the tip now is the darkest you're going to be. And as you colour, that tip will gradually go paler and paler and paler as the glycerin and the whatever is in the middle of this. I don't know exactly what's in the middle, but whatever is in the middle of here will gradually go lighter and lighter. Okay, so we're going to start where we want it darkest, so in the centres. So let's just do this one petal, shall we? So we want to start dark, and then as I'm going out, can you see it's beginning to go slightly paler and paler and paler and paler. Okay, so I want the palest colours right up here at the top. Now, as I say, it doesn't blend, so we do have the problem of little tiny pieces, because it sinks in. The whole point of a dye-based ink is it sinks in and it dries. And that's why it's great for those lovely little tiny things. So we're kind of trying to make it do something that it's not designed to do. So I'm going to start again here, and I'm going to go outwards, and I'm going to do another bit, and I'm only taking a tiny bit at a time of the colour, because you can always add a tiny bit more colour. You can't take it away, sadly. Once you've messed it up, you can't take it away. And gradually all I'm doing is building this up and taking it out to the edge. Okay, and it's a long, slow, laborious, rather tedious, to be honest, pastime. But if you can only afford one set of pens, which of course may be the case because they're not cheap, they are well worth the money, but they're not cheap, then I would suggest that, you know, you can get, I'll just show you where we've got to for now, that you can get some very nice effects which are similar to blenders with the dye pens, and the dye pens can do so many more other things. But I have to say I'm a great believer in buying the two different pens to do the two different jobs. So these can be made into tonal working pens by using a blender pen. Okay, so the third thing I want to show you is probably one of the most useful things that you'll get with your pens, is the ability to correct errors. How many times, or maybe it's only me, but I'm sure it isn't. How many times have you stamped away and you're having a lovely time, and then, oh no, it's got a bit missing, it's got a chunk missing from the side, or oh dear, I didn't get the G quite properly. Okay, now I had to fake these, and I faked these using a little sticky notepads. So I used a little piece of sticky notepad over the top of these, because sadly they're such good quality stamps, it's quite hard to make mistakes, but we do all still make them. Now the advantage is the inks and the ink in the pens are perfect matches, perfect. So this is where you can then get your pen out, and this is where your very small side is really helpful. So I'm going to do the simple one first. I'm just going to imagine where that line should have been, and suddenly what was a messed up piece of writing is now back to normal and looking great. And it looks a tiny weeny bit darker at this moment in time, but that's only because it hasn't dried. Once that's dried, in fact it's drying as we're talking, and the colour is matching beautifully. Okay, and we can do the same here. We've just got to have a little think, where would the edge of that tulip have been if it was there? And we've now got a tulip with at least an edge. And we could, if we then wanted to, spend a little bit of time just cross-hatching this so that the whole thing will match up very nicely. Now, I haven't got time to do this beautifully, but I think you'll agree that fairly quickly it's not a bad job, and if I had longer I could make it even more perfect. But certainly I can rescue my cards by using the Stampin' Right to fill in any gaps where I've really not stamped it terribly well. Okay, so let's have a look at another thing that these wonderful Marvellous markers can do. So here's my absolute favourite thing to do with the Marvellous markers. Oh, it's quite a tongue twister, that one. I'm going to use the brush end, and I'm going to use the very side of the brush, not the tip, because I don't want to mash up the tip. So I'm going to use the edge of the tip. Okay, and I'm just going to run it along gently, just gently, not too heftily, along my stamp. And I'm going to just colour in the stamp itself. Okay, and this works with both the red rubber and with the photopolymer, although I have to say it works best with the red rubber because the red rubber holds the ink best. So I'm going to then take another colour, and I am going to do the same with the side of my brush, with the side of, I don't want to rough up my actual, I don't want to be scuffing up the tips, so I'm doing it gently. Okay, and then because by the time I've done this it might be starting to dry, I'm going to huff on it just like you would on the kind of window, a frosty window in winter. So I'm just going to go okay, and what happens is that damp in the huff of my breath is going to get onto the ink, and it's just going to make sure that it activates it. And just like as if you were using an ink pad, you're going to just give it a little light press and hold it. And there you go. We've now got a 2-colour stamped image. So instead of using just the one colour with one ink pad, we'd only be able to get 1 colour at a time. We can now get 2 colours. Or in fact 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. We could have literally done each and every single letter a different colour if we'd wanted to. So these are the kind of effects you can get. So here's a lovely card in the same colours, those same lovely colours, but the flowers have been coloured in one colour, the writing was coloured in another, and the green was done on the leaves, because that is just one single stamp. So isn't that lovely? We can suddenly produce multicoloured images by using our pens. Fabulous, unbelievably fabulous. So let's go another step in the same direction. Let's take, for example, a tree. And let me just find a little piece of card. There we go. I'm going to take a tree and I'm going to colour the, I was going to say the stem, it's not, it's the trunk on a tree. Oh, Gilly, you are going mad. Right, the trunk of the tree I've just coloured in brown. I'm now going to take a paler green and I'm just going to, again with the side of my brush, I'm just going to take the top part of each of these. It's almost made up, this tree stamp is almost made up of sort of clouds, and the sort of the leaves are sort of laid out as a pine would do in the wild, in sort of layers. So I'm just going to do the top of each of the layers in the paler green, which was, oh, it's a very old one, it's Cucumber Crush, that was. And I'm going to use this one, which is Shaded Spruce, to just do the bits at the bottom that I haven't filled in. So I'm going along the bottoms of each of the ones, so joining up. So really what we're doing is we're kind of colouring in the image on the actual stamp itself. And you can imagine doing this with any image at all, any colours, multitude of different colours. And now, just like before, I'm going to huff to reactivate the ink. So I had to do several because it was quite a long stamp. And then I'm just going to push it down gently, just like before. We're not really pressing hard, we're just ensuring that the whole of the area is in touch with the paper. And off it comes. And what we end up with, I think, is particularly beautiful, because we now have a tree which has several different colours within the foliage, so it looks so much more natural and beautiful, doesn't it? Don't you think that looks so much nicer than just one set of colour? And of course we've also got that lovely bark, the dark bark of the trunk going all the way right through to the very top. So those are some of the things you can do, but you can also do pretty much any other thing that you can do with watercolour inks. So I'm just going to give you one last thing. I'm going to show you how to make this lovely chap, who is, I think, a really lovely image. I love this seahorse. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a ordinary long thin, which one is it? It's a letter H block. All the blocks have a little letter on to tell you what size they are. So this is an H. And I'm going to take 2 pens. I'm going to take the Bermuda Bay and the Pumpkin Pie. And I am going to I'm turned it over because I put a little mark on these just for my classes, so I know it's mine, and they are slightly bumpy, so I'm going to just turn it onto this side. Thought I'd better explain why I was turning it over for you, because you'd be thinking, what has she done that for? Oh. Okay, and all I'm doing is coming in from the side, alternate sides with the orange, and now I'm going to do the same but with the bluey green. And it's always best, if you can, to do this in the dark colour second, so that if you do happen to get the other colour mixed in on your nib of your pen, at least it's a pale colour on the dark nib, so it won't interfere so much. Okay, now I'm going to take the a water spritz. I'm just going to remove the original before I spritz everything around, and I'm just going to, oh, I always miss, hold on, there we go. So I've now spritzed it, and I'm simply going to turn this around and put it onto the paper, and can you see it going and eating up the, there we go, it literally just went and soaked up the ink. Because it's a dye-based ink, it aims to go right into the paper for you. It's not going to sit on the top like a pigment ink would. It's going to soak right through into the paper. Now we need to get that to dry, so in Blue Peter style I have got one that I made earlier. Okay, and we did say that if we're using these, because they are dye-based inks, the best thing to use really with them is a stays-on ink. So I'm going to use the stays-on ink, and I'm just going to stamp it with my seahorse image. Here we go. Okay, and here is the equally lovely thing you can do. Now then, we'll just get this paper a little bit flatter. There we go. Here's what you can now do, which is such fun if you like me, you like doing a little bit of artwork. Because these are dye-based pens, I can now add some detail. So I'm going to just come in and just, starting from the edge, just pull in, not a whole amount, but just a little bit. I'm almost doing like a little L shape. So it's going down and across on each of the little areas until we get to here where you can't do an L shape, you just have to do a little sort of dippity dot. Okay, to the end, and we're going to do the same here. So I'm going to do this all the way down here. Whee! And I'm going to do it rather fast, but it won't matter, it'll still look gorgeous. I'm just going to sort of whiz it down there, and the last bit is on his chest. And maybe just a little bit of a circle to accentuate the shape of his face and his nose. Okay, and what I might then do is just a little bit of, as if there's some reed or some, maybe some seaweed up the side. And then what I've done with this one is I have then torn it off and mounted it up with some little bit of vellum and various colours behind. So isn't that lovely? And that's something you can do so easily with the dye-based markers because they are water-based, so they soak into your papers just the way any ink would do. So I know that there's so much more you can do with these pens, but I'm hoping that gives you just a little flavour of what's possible, and that you might be tempted, like me, to go and invest in a lovely pack. But please, if you're buying a whole pack, do get in touch with me first. Go to gillyhunt.com, look for my information, contact me, because the possibility of joining my team buying this means that you could join the team, and it would be such a shame if you missed out on some extra discount. Okay, thanks very much, and I'll see you with the letter N next. Thank you, bye bye.